Another day in the shop here at Hasport, and I have a Prelude here. Well, I got the business end of a Prelude here. I'm chopping a bunch of the cars I'm not going to rebuild in half and just going to use the engine bays to prototype stuff, and that's what I'm doing with this. Welcome to VTEC Academy. You're about to get schooled. The reason I have a front half car is because I am redesigning the K series mount kits, and I want them to be different than they were before. Before, they were meant for a TSX or an Accord transmission. I want them to fit the RSX transmission, the Accord and TSX transmission, as well as the 2012 Civic Si, and of course, the all-wheel drive transmission, because somebody out there wants an all-wheel drive Prelude. Anyway, that's not what I want. And I thought, while I'm waiting for a couple brackets to be welded, why don't I try a J series motor here? Because that's what I want. I want a J series in here. So I'm going to wheel a J over here, drop this engine bay over the J series, and see what kind of hood clearance, what kind of ground clearance, and how I would design those mounts. Let's check this out. Catch. Question is, can I sneak it past the alternator and the exhaust? I don't think I can. Well, we got a little bit hanging down below the subframe. I think what I'd like to do right now is put the hood on and see at what point it starts to bump it up. So line it up. Of course, my phone's ringing. We're already on the engine, so let's see what kind of... That probably gives us about a quarter inch to half inch of clearance. So I can live with that. Better than a K and better than a J and a Civic.
Can you cut away the skin on the
Oh yeah, I'm sure. But I'm not sure everybody's going to want to do that. Hangs down a little more lowly than I want, but I still think it's doable. Let's see where we're hitting. Yeah, this isn't really thick right here, so it's not like we're going to gain a bunch of space by removing hood structure. Still, I think I'd like to do this. Much better ground clearance than my J Series CRX. Well, I'm thinking about trying the K20C in there, but that's actually taller than a J Series. So I'm not sure how worthwhile that's going to be. But what the hell, let's give it a try.
You guys silly? I'm still going to send it.
At some point, I'll have to get my other Prelude out here. This particular one's a K20C4, but it does have a Type R turbo on it. So external dimensions would be the same. Push it back a little. Wonder how many throw a hood on it. Yeah. I think we're hitting something. Okay, hood clearance. It definitely hangs down lower than the J did. About another inch lower than the J is. Still think I'd like a J in here.
Oh yeah.
I think I'll pass on making mounts for this particular swap. K20C in this, it's such a tall motor. I mean, I'm not sure anybody would want this to stick out of the hood, which is what you'd want to have if you wanted good ground clearance. It really would ruin the lines of a of a Prelude. Prelude's not like a Civic with a J sticking out of the hood. I think a J would be a much better swap in this than would be the K20C. I think we'll keep the K20C and possibly the TSX. So when I get one of those up here, I will try that in, see how it works. All right, this is the real reason we have the Prelude here. That is for these engine mounts. Scott, by the way, thank you very much. You did a bang up job today getting all this stuff out. It was a lot of work, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So I spent the morning designing. He spent the afternoon cutting, bending, and welding. And we have basically all the mounts here you could ever want for putting a K-Series in a Prelude. And that's what this is really about. We're going to show you all the different configurations. So there's actually 4 different transmissions, and that kind of determines what you're going to use in order to get that in a car. So all these kits will be available. I think this one this one I'm going to modify a little bit more, but they'll all be available on the Hasport website pretty soon. So I'm just going to kind of go over them real quick. This is the passenger side. We have a block bracket that uses our mount. This block bracket is universal. It'll fit on a K20, K24, and a K24Z. So it'll actually fit on all of those. And the cool thing about it is it's kind of sucked back, so if you're trying to use the K24Z power steering, this will be out of the way of that. So it should work out pretty good. This is the bracket that winds up getting welded onto the frame rail. It has this cool little locating pin to help you get it in the right spot. But that would be, regardless of which of the K24 A or Z or K20 A or Z that you're putting in, that you're going to use that. The rear mount looks like this, bolts onto the subframe. This, by the way, is going to be the same rear mount we're going to use for some Accord kits as well, and for the 5th gen Prelude when it comes out. But this rear mount stays the same, but the bracket changes. So first off, if you've got EP3 transmission, RSX transmission, 06 to 11 Civic Si transmission, this is the rear bracket. There's a couple of big giant bolt holes by the diff. This one is particularly sturdy, and my recommendation for drag racing. Next, we have this one right here. This works with the 03 to 07 Accord, also works with the 04 to 08 TSX transmission. On top of that, it also works with the 2nd gen TSX and the, let's see, it would be 08 to 13 Accord, so that makes it 09 to 14 TSX. And so that rear bracket works with that. And if you got to have an all-wheel drive Prelude, which somebody is, this is the contraption that works for that. So it bolts onto the diff bolts and 2 of the bolts that go through the transmission of the block. Next, we have the transmission side mount. So the mount that goes on in that pocket up there is this one right here. These spacers will be cool aluminum rather than these steel pieces that I've got right now. But again, this is the mount that goes on that side. And if you've got the majority of transmissions, all-wheel drive transmission, 2012 Civic Si transmission, 2nd gen TSX, 08 to 13 Accord, RSX, EP3, 06 to 11 Civic, that is your transmission bracket. This one is just for 1st gen TSX and for the 03 to 7 Accord. So we actually have all the engines here, so we're fitting them in, making sure everything's okay before we put them into production. So we're going to let you guys follow along as we do that, and since we have all the different types of transmissions, we'll show you how each one of those mounts works with the transmission. So without further ado, shall we wheel the first motor in? Let's grab we have an 06 to 11 Civic Si motor for the first one. Okay, the first one we have here is the 06 to 11 Civic transmission. For the transmission bracket, whoops. This is the one that bolts up on top. By the way, it's got this new mount's got this tricky little cutout. So if you're using a Quaife transmission, that's where your reverse cable goes. Anyway, that's going to bolt on like that, right there. And for the rear, it's going to use this mount right here. For those of you who've done EGK swaps. That probably looks really familiar to you. That bolts in back here and then down to these two bungs down below. So let's put it in. Since this is a K20, we're going to be using the two bottom holes.
That's the one show I did like, was Celebrity Deathmatch.
Let's get it on! Oh.
Celebrity Deathmatch was good.
Tonight on this episode, he makes fun of the less fortunate.
All right, let's get 3 bolts for this.
Dedicated to something?
The holes on the rear mount are slightly slotted for a little bit of ability to adjust them right and left. This particular engine is a K20, and for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with Hasport mounts, most of the Hasport mount kits are dual height, and the reason they're like that is so that we keep the head in the same position. So K20, we're going to mount at the higher position. That means this mount is going to be flipped like this. So this flange is going to be higher. So that's going to allow us to kind of have the engine up a little bit higher to take advantage of maximizing ground clearance, but more importantly, just make sure the head is in the same place, whether it's a K20 or a K24. One thing people need to understand about putting the mounts in is when you have the right and left set on the high position, this uses the bottom hole because this is mounted to the motor and you want to bring it up, so you're going to use the bottom hole. So,
Did you hear that?
well, yeah, you don't need
For the
this.
people at home, I was going to put that on there, and now I'm not.
Did you drop it? No, I was just done holding it. All right, one tip for putting these in, quite often it's really difficult to get the engine exactly level. So the best thing to do is put the 2 top bolts in. Then you can take a jack and lift up the back end of it and get the bolts in the bottom. Right now, we're going to go ahead and lift it up in the air and do that.
Do we have enough weight of car to be able to do this? Doctor?
If you come over here right now, you can see that this is just barely touching the frame rail. We are going to ask people to go in there and put a nice little 1/2-inch dent in there. There's nothing behind her except sheet metal, so punching that in is going to give us the clearance we need. The reason we're asking you to do that is if you look at the subframe, because normally the diff's over here, you can see how much this subframe is dished out right here. It's not on this side. We want to try to get the motor back as far as possible, so putting a nice little dent right there is going to allow us to get the engine back, and that just helps with a lot of clearance on everything. We have, this is the mount kit. Just kind of want to show you again what's going on. We have this, it's a K20Z3 with the, it's got an RSX transmission, but basically the same as a K20Z3 transmission. It mounts with the 3 bolt holes here and the rear bracket that bolts onto the different 2 bolt holes on the differential. And you can see here the way the mount kit works, and we have hood clearance, and it's all good. So this kit, again, would work with an RSX Type S transmission and any of the K series. It would work with the EP3 transmission and, of course, the 06 to 11 Civic Si transmission. So this kit is going to be called a BB1 K2, and that's how it works if you have one of those engines. All right, let's put a K24 in here.
Cool.
Okay, our next engine is a K24Z. This particular one has a K24Z transmission. This one's out of an Accord, but basically externally it's identical to that comes in the 2012 Civic Si or the TSX. So we're going to try that in real quick. This is a K24Z. This particular engine, if you want to use it with the older style ECU and not drive by wire, you're going to wind up changing this timing chain cover. You're going to use one from K-Power. If you have, let's say, one of the aftermarket ECUs like AEM or Haltech, you can run drive-by-wire, which is what this engine is, and you're going to need, but regardless of what you're doing, you're going to need Hasport's block bracket here. Normally the bracket has these 4 bolt holes, and then this one back here, there's a triangular piece that comes back here. This, you're going to just need to find a bolt that attaches it down. This one doesn't go through into the block, so you don't have to do anything with it. But this is set up to work with that. You're going to use the taller holes because it's a K24, so the ones that are spread up a little bit higher. So that one, and then this slides to the bottom of the slot on this particular one. One of the cool things about this is the power steering pump sits in a little bit tighter on this particular car. So you're probably going to run power steering on your Prelude. So this, because it comes in a little bit tighter, has plenty of room for the power steering pump, which is a little bit tighter. Some people try to get away with the mount that's on there because they think it's the same, but it's not. The holes are actually shifted back a little bit. So it's not really the same, even though it looks the same as a K20, it's not. We're able to use the same mount on this side that we use with an RSX transmission. I'm going to put that front bolt in and then I'll rotate it in position. This we're going to mount at the lower position. So that one needs to be flipped over. This one gets flipped over.
Boop. Are we going that way?
Oh,
You were so close.
Almost.
the rear mount looks like this. This is very similar to a mount we make called EGK4 rear mount. Basically, it bolts onto the block a little bit differently. Now this time, of course, we're lowering the motor, so that means we're going to use the top holes for the through bolt, not the bottom hole. Okay. These transmissions are actually moderately still readily available, these 5-speed transmissions from the Accord. So if you're looking for a K-swap transmission and you can't find a 6-speed, you might try looking for one of these Accord 5-speeds. I've been able to find quite a few of them in salvage yards around the U.S. Also the TSX, the second-gen TSX, uses the same case. And of course, if you want the limited slip differential, the 2012 to 2015 Civic Si, that is how this transmission works. So the mounts that go with that is the same mount that we use for a lot of the swap kits, the BB1 K2 left-hand bracket. On the rear, it's called a BB1 K4 rear bracket because it works with another couple of transmissions that we're going to try next. But these engines are still pretty readily available. You can do drive-by-wire if you want to. If you want to do drive-by-cable, then you wind up changing the timing chain side to something that allows you to run the old-style crank angle sensor. But this mount kit will put this motor in here nicely. Got hood clearance. It works out really well. All right, so let's take this out and try another motor.
Once again, here we go with this, putting our universal block bracket on. You notice from the last K24, we had it in the bottom because they spread that pattern out just a little bit, but that's the beauty of this thing. So now it's at the top of the slot on this engine.
So this engine right here is our little Frankenstein motor that we have had in the budget EG. It's a CRV block K24A1 with an TSX head. So dimensionally the same as an Accord motor, a TSX motor. Or CRV motor for that matter. The only difference is the CRV has a manifold that's huge and tall and probably wouldn't fit underneath the hood, but this actually has the 06 Civic Si manifold on it, and we're going to try it in. So if you've got a TSX swap or an Accord swap, this would be the equivalent of that. And the transmission also is an Accord transmission, same as a TSX transmission. So it has these 2 bolt holes instead of the 3, and then there's also a bolt hole we utilize here on the side. So we have a different bracket for that we're going to have to change out. This pops right on right here. and we will get this going here.
Yeah, cool.
It looks like it's not going to clear, and then it like slides right by. All right, so low side.
Low side.
Yep. All right, so here's the mount kit, the way it sits for using the 03 to 07 Accord and the first gen TSX. Again, same block bracket on that side with that mount. That always stays the same. This is the change over here. We have this different transmission bracket, very similar to the EGK4. That bracket will be on there. And then for the rear, oh crap, we haven't put the rear bolt in. That's hilarious. All right, we got it in. Something about the Accord transmission, the diff is actually a little bit bigger, so you definitely have to put a dent in the frame rail. It's going to be required no matter what transmission you use. Nice half-inch dent in there just to kind of make the clearance you need. Might even be worthwhile to make a saw cut and maybe make it a little bit easier to kind of move it out of the way. But again, I wanted to suck the motor back absolutely as far as possible to get as good an axle angle as we could get. We found that with our Prelude that with 650 horsepower, it worked much better with the engine farther back. We've been running it like that for years, and we actually made custom mounts for that particular car, but now we're moving it to everybody. So there's going to be a dent there to try to give the differential room to move around a little bit. So
everyone can be as cool as us.
Yeah, so everybody can be as cool as us. Thank you. Good. All right, so let's drop her down and get the motor out. This one's a little bit worrisome. The diff is actually quite a bit larger. So the question is, are we going to have to do more clearancing in order for it to fit, or will it go on? So I actually was a little concerned, so I removed the offending metal. This is the piece that's going to generally hit on a transmission, so I made a couple of cuts and kind of mashed it out of the way. If this was my car, I would probably go in there and cut that out and strengthen it, I'm guessing. What I would do. But anyway, we're going to try this in and see if we have to cut more. If we do, we will. The other option would be to move the engine back forward again. No. So anyway, let's see what happens. Stop. If you want an all-wheel drive, you're going to have to clearance the pass-through for the prop shaft. It's making contact. We're about a half-inch shy of bolting up, and we are making contact on top. So
You can actually kind of see from back here.
oh, you can see it from back there?
Cool. The PTO part, you really don't have a whole lot. There's like 1/4 inch at least, probably, but where the rear mount part would be mounting, looks like, I don't know how much. You might be able to remove some metal there. Like where you were doing that smash.
Yeah,
I can see it sticking down there or something, or maybe it's part of the rack actually.
Yep.
I like the factory flare out on that.
Yeah, so
Subframe fits that.
yeah, the flare comes out.
It looks like
So,
it's built for it.
Let's go ahead and go up a little bit, and we'll show you what's going on here. Here we go. If it's sat back, well, even that isn't enough. It needs to sit back this far. See how far that is? So it needs to go back a good inch, and then you would have room to put all-wheel drive in this thing. So I don't think I want to redesign mounts to move it forward to make all-wheel drive possible. I think if anybody wants all-wheel drive, they just need to modify their subframe. So I'll probably make just a handful of these all-wheel drive rear brackets and let people kind of...
Yeah, because that's going to require to chop, even up here to have that bracket recess into there.
Yeah, because, well, not really. It's going to be right there. So...
Well, yeah, because this surface was just touching that.
Just
and
touching
we were
it.
basically right there.
Right.
So, yeah.
So this surface underneath here would need to be trimmed out, reinforced, and then you'd be able to go all-wheel drive on this. It'll be interesting to see how it works with the Accord, the CB Accord and CD Accord. I remember I made some all-wheel drive mounts for Boosted Boys, but I'm not sure if they had to do any modifications to it. They actually put it in their Odyssey.
Oh, cool.
So, but that engine was sitting slightly farther forward than this one was. I think that's going to conclude our Prelude video. Darn, it didn't fit. I don't want to go chopping up our subframe right now, though, to make it fit. So I'm going to leave that to somebody who actually wants an all-wheel drive Prelude. But it can be done. All right. So, guys, thanks for joining us for another episode of VTEC Academy. This was about designing mounts for cars. We got a couple more of those videos coming out. There's going to be some new mount kits out. So you may find more stuff like this. I think next what we're going to do is work on that S2000, wrap that thing up. So guys, thanks. Please think about liking, subscribing. And if you got a friend with a Prelude wants a K-swap, tell them mounts are on the way. They'll be ready soon. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
What'd you say?
I said bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.